What's up, YouTube? Okay, so I've talked about this before, and this is going off of what I was saying in my last video today. I'm finally giving an illustration to this sort of thing I've talked about well before today on this channel, but I never really gave an illustration to go with it, which makes it much easier for a neurotypical to understand what I'm saying, what I'm talking about. So there are two contemporary views on this. One view is that matter, not everything is made of something, not all matter is made of some other matter. The second view is that all matter is made of other matter. And I will demonstrate why this one would be more illogical and more paradoxical than the first, and why it will not occur, and it's more likely that this would occur, and that this is what actually occurs. The top one, sorry. So, I'm not sure what this does, but alright, look. The top one, the end of the chain of matter, this is an order chain of matter, as is this, but in the first one you have space between each chunk. Space, absolute nothingness, space between each chunk. So basically, between each chunk there is patches of absolute nothingness. So there is no matter, and there is nothing immaterial in between either. There's just absolute nothingness. But there are patches of it, so that's a paradox. And yet, neurotypicals think that we walk through these patches of absolute nothingness without it being a paradox. Also, so that's already one paradox. If you're sold on the first one being more accurate than the second, you'd already have to presuppose that paradoxes happen, since, well, there are spaces between, and the spaces would be patches of absolute nothingness. It wouldn't be patches of matter, and it wouldn't be patches of the immaterial or the spiritual. It would just be neither. It'd be absolute nothingness, which cannot be spiritual or physical. So it's just nothing. And it's a paradox in and of itself, and yet there would be patches of it that we would be walking through, because not all matter would be made of other matter, so there'd have to be space between them. Now, I do believe there are teachings in chemistry about how there are notions out there amongst neurotypicals today about how atoms have, they give ballpark estimates, 99% about, there's empty space between atoms, 99% is empty, and then others say it's not that, nowhere near that much, and others say there's no space. You'll hear a lot of different takes on it from people from all walks of life, but none of them really have any firm grasp or understanding on how logic would apply all the way through to this. I mean, they understand, well, some of them do, but not most of them. And if they get it right, that doesn't mean they have a full understanding of all of this. But in any case, like I was saying, so then you'd also have to say that if there is, in fact, space between these atoms of patches of absolute nothingness, again, which is a paradox, then why would you also say, oh, well, okay, well, the start of this ordinary chain of matter, well, then that would stand to reason there is a start of this chain as well. since not every piece of matter is made of other matter, which is what necessitates there being space between the chunks of matter, then that would just also necessitate that the matter, there's a beginning to the chain of matter, there's a first piece of matter. So, which, don't get me wrong, let's say this chain of matter creates something that is like 2 feet tall, an object that is 2 feet tall. Well, okay, this is 2 feet tall, but like, that actually is like mathematically consistent with the laws of logic, and it's like actually accurate to math to some degree, as far as like addition, right? Like, there's this many and then it equals this amount. But if so that's why this is less paradoxical, and it respects the laws of physics and logic more than the contrary unpopular notion. Well, actually popular notion, but not for the best, of course, where there is no space between each chunk. All matter is made of other matter. So, and basically, I don't know what this does. I don't know what this is. I have no idea. And what is this? Okay. Nope. No space. Anyway, as I was saying, no space between each chunk. All matter is made of other matter. So that makes no sense, because again, then it's like that you'd say it's the same thing. It's the same chain of matter, except in this scenario, there's no space between each chunk. That doesn't make any sense, because it violates the premises of the top one that made it a actually logical, mathematically accurate model of matter that respects the laws of logic, whereas this one does not, because it ignores the fact that this is actually accurate to simple elementary addition, where you add finite amounts and get a finite total, but not the case here, because this means in this scenario, there's not a start to the chain, and that little small one at the bottom is not even the start of the chain. It's just illustrated as if it is, and because that's all you can do on an illustration is represent concepts. You can't actually put a concept onto a paper. It's not possible through the laws of logic. And then you have no space between each chunk. All matter is made of other matter. That doesn't make sense, because again, it's just like the opposite of the above. Spaces between each chunk. There's absolute nothingness, but here there is no absolute nothingness between each chunk, but there's also no space at all. So that means everything is made of something. That's like saying this is 2 feet tall, this is 2 feet tall, but this has all the amounts that go into something to make it 2 feet tall. Like if this was if you cut this in half, the amount of matter in it, it'd be 1. You add 1 plus 1 is 2 feet tall. 1 foot plus 1 foot. But if you did this, it's infinity, and you get 2 feet tall, because it's the same height. So it's a paradox. So that's why I'm saying it's not like things are 2 feet tall but have infinite amounts of matter in them. I mean, unless you wanted to say that it just gets smaller and smaller and smaller the lower you go. I mean, that would make it so that it is ultimately, I don't know, I suppose it could be still 2 feet tall if you just go tinier and tinier with the lower ones. But, still, the fact that that doesn't change the fact that this would have infinite weight, and this would not. So while this would not really have infinite length, height, or anything like that, because this is 2 feet tall, and every lower atom below it is actually smaller than the last one, so that it all adds up to only 2 feet no matter what. Like, you could have infinite regress and still be 2 feet tall. Like, you start using decimals in so many places over to the right, it'd still amount to only 2 feet. But that would still be an infinite amount of weight, however. So, and how can a finite thing have an infinite number of things within it? So it's a paradox in and of itself. Infinity isn't infinity. So to say that you can take, because you'd have to keep adding forever and ever, and it would be all the things you would add into it would have weight, because they're all matter, and all matter has weight. So it would all add up to infinite weight for something that is only 2 feet tall, which is a paradox. Remember, weight isn't the same thing as height, so size isn't the same thing as weight. So in this scenario as well, but and yeah, let's think about it. Let's say the top one weighs, let's say this 2-foot object weighs 10 pounds. Well, if it weighs 10 pounds in both scenarios, because it's the same 2-foot object, it's just different ways it could have went for it. Well, then, if it just weighs 10 pounds, then how much does the top portion weigh, and the second one, the third one, the fourth one? Well, you could say that if it's an infinite number of them in it, but it weighs 10 pounds, then you could have to do some math here, right? You have to do, sorry, that was an accident. You'd have to have 10, why is this so? 10 pounds, and well, you could say 9 pounds plus, and then an infinite number of pounds equals 10 pounds. It doesn't make sense. It's a paradox, you see. Whereas up here, and when I say 9 pounds, right, the 9 pounds, you could say these add up to 9 pounds. And everything after it, an infinite number of particles that when you add them together, if they equal 10 pounds, it would be 9 plus infinity pounds equals 10 pounds. So it's a paradox. But if you said it was these bottom two are 1, you get 10 pounds, but it's not in this scenario, because all matter is made of other matter. So there has to be an infinite number of matter to stack onto it. So it's a paradox. This is not the truth. This is not how things work. So it must be this, surely, according to science, elementary educational system science, that neurotypicals agree with so eagerly. But at the same time, then in this scenario, that would be, this is 9 pounds, and this is 1, pound. And yeah, and so this is all 10 pounds. This is infinity pounds. So if this is true, then we still have to address something else here. We're not done, because that's only, assessing the this part of it. Like I was saying, I was also pointing out another paradox prior. There's multiple variables in this that must be inspected in order to actually determine if this is not totally non-paradoxical. The weight of the chain of matter is actually also very contingent upon the how do I say it? What is used? What are the components of the chain? And so it is not just what these detectable chunks weigh, say, on a scale, but then you could say what is between them, if there is anything. And there is something between them in this scenario. Certainly, except it amounts to an infinity pounds. It amounts to 10 pounds equaling infinity of pounds. So it's like saying infinity equals 10, when in fact this is not true, mathematically speaking. So essentially, well, I mean, that's about all. Like I said, in between the spaces, right? Absolute nothingness. So, like I said earlier, way earlier in this video, as in, when I say absolute nothingness, I don't mean it's physical. I don't mean it's spiritual. I mean it's neither. That means it's nothing. So you can't walk in nothing. Not in a literal sense, but if you could, but it would be a paradox if you did. So, and like I said, this is not true. This is not the true scenario. So this is wrong. This is right. And if that's the case, then basically we have been walking inside of absolute nothingness. We walk in this. We walk in these patches. We walk inside of the unwalkable. We walk inside of we walk inside of a non-location. Space is a location. This is a space. Location. Whereas, absolute nothingness in between these spaces, that's not space. It's nothing. And yet, we are not walking in space or a location when we walk in between these spaces. Inside of, these patches of nothingness are something we walk inside of space itself. It's just a mega paradox. So there you go. I wouldn't even label it, because that'll just give the wrong idea. There's nothing here, but we walk inside this. We walk in these patches. these are the patch. This is an example. This is an enlarged view of these patches of nothingness. We literally walk. We walk in space, but we also walk. We walk in a location, but we also walk in what isn't a location at all. How can you walk in something in what isn't a location? You see, that's already a paradox. So, yet we do it. If this is false and this model is true, then this is a paradox. A true paradox of life. Plain and simple. So, that is why I think that the Bible, that's another reason I think the Bible is wrong. I think major world religions are wrong. And I think that Einstein was wrong. I've talked about all of this many times, millions of times already on this channel. Okay? There you have it. So, let me know what you think. Do we really walk inside of apps? Do we walk in what is not even a location? And if we don't, is that a paradox? If you think it is, and do you think that that would refute and do you think this would agree with my argument? Do you think that would agree with my arguments? Do you think this is consistent with my arguments? Well, that's all for this video. Please like, share, subscribe. I'm out. Bye.